Hey everyone, and welcome to Speakers. Today I'm going to go over mistakes that new beginners make in aquaponics. In aquaponics, you're going to make so many mistakes, and these mistakes are going to cost you time, they'll cost you money. These mistakes are going to cost you plants and even fish. So I've compiled a list of 10 mistakes that I made, and I'm hoping that you're not going to make the same mistakes. Please hang around until the very last one, because I still regret to date making that last mistake. The first mistake I'm going to talk about is loose piping. Let me explain this. So I'm going to be using a board for this. This is fish tank, right? Fish tank. Fish tank has a pump in it. Okay. Then these are my grow beds. Okay. So this pump is going to send water onto my grow beds. Grow bed 1, grow bed 2. Then that grow bed is full. It's going to start draining back where? Into the tank. Okay, that's the arrow going back into the tank. Okay, pay attention here, right? This plumbing system, all these pipes or hoses, they're not just continuous. You're connecting them into, they have all these joints. The joint here, that's an elbow right there. There's a T feeding right here. Another elbow right here. Another elbow. It's a T right here. It's an elbow. Okay, and maybe over here too. But specifically, I want to focus on this right here. Those joints. The story is this. I finished setting up my system just like this, and then walked away. Fast forward, one time my wife was walking by the garden and she saw a bunch of water just coming out from the piping. Well, it was emptying out my 200-gallon tank onto the ground, and lucky enough, or thankfully, she was able to stop it. So this is what happened. Over time, you have a pump that is continuously running, and this is running at a given pressure and at a given flow rate. Well, there is so much going on within that piping. There's so much vibration that occurs, and over time, something is going to give up. In this case, it's going to be the weak parts. What are the weak parts? The joints. These weak points right here, these are the ones that are going to give up, and one is going to come. It's going to come loose. Let me explain even better. If this is your elbow, right? Let's say this comes off. If it comes off, that whole water is coming out. To prevent this, the remedy for this is use the following 3 things. 1, use screws. Okay. 2, you can use clamps. You're using hoses. Okay. And 3, you can use PVC cement. Okay. You can use that. How are you going to use the screws, for example? Because these are my favorite ones. So this pipe right here is going to connect right here, right? This pipe is going to connect right here. So what you want to do is get a drill and drill a hole right here, drill another hole right here, and then install screws. That way you don't have to worry about the system just falling apart. Okay, that's one thing. Or you can use clamps if you're using hoses. Okay, you can just clamp here and clamp here using hoses. PVC cement, I would suggest that one for like bigger systems, because that one is more permanent. Now, I prefer the screws and the clamps because they save you the cost and also they reduce the system downtime. What I mean is, you don't have to go purchase a new set of piping or hoses, and it's a quick fix. Now, the second mistake that I made was I used weak grow beds. Do not use weak grow beds. Let me explain. When I was just starting out, I ended up buying 4 plastic containers, and they're the storage bins. If you know, those storage bins, they're usually thin. So with the heat in warm, it basically baked. It bakes down that plastic, and that plastic becomes brittle and begins to create cracks. That's just a disaster waiting to happen, because one time you're going to walk over there and you're going to have leaks and everything's going to be all over the place. So to prevent that, don't go cheap like I did. Yes, I was trying to save money, yes, but the problem is those plastic containers are not designed for stressful environments like being baked in the sun. So what I suggest you do is this: do the 2 things that I've finally done. Purchase grow beds that are going to, or use grow beds that are going to be UV resistant, and 2, make sure they're heavy duty plastic. Okay, that's the second one. The third mistake that I made was I used clear plastic containers. Again, those storage bins were clear. Anyone who knows anything to do with putting water in a clear plastic container and exposing it to the sun for a long period of time, they knows that that's a recipe for algae buildup. Because next thing you know, I had so much algae buildup in my grow beds, and that algae takes away the dissolved oxygen, and also it takes away the nutrients that the plant should be using. So in my case, all my Chinese cabbage just began dying, because this nutrients was being taken away, and also the dissolved oxygen was not really being available to these plants. So you want to make sure that you do not use clear plastic containers. But if you have to use clear plastic containers, then I suggest that you have them covered, which is what I eventually did. Use something that is going to block off the sun, the sun's rays going into the grow beds themselves. Or I've seen some people just go ahead and spray outside of the grow bed. You can also do that. Okay. The fourth mistake I made was I never created a shed for my young plants. So when I was transplanting my young lettuce from the nursery into the grow beds, I was doing it under full sun conditions. That's a big no-no. And then also I had not provided a shed for them. So within days, all those seedlings had already dried out and died. So what should you do in that case? First of all, don't do what I did. You're going to be transplanting seedlings like that. You want to wait and do it later when the sun is not so hot. But also, what's very important though is you should always harden off your seedlings. Okay, you want to use a shed netting or a simple canopy during the transition from the nursery to the grow bed. Okay, you want to do that. And then the fifth mistake that I made was transplanting too early. What I mean is, I did not wait for the seedlings to develop a robust root structure. Some of my seedlings fell because I transplanted them before they developed robust root systems. So the lesson here is you should only transplant seedlings that have well-established roots that can anchor into your grow medium. That's very important, because this ensured nutrient uptake and plant stability. Okay, moving on to the sixth one. The sixth one was watermelon transfer failure. All right, so I started off with 4 watermelons. I was so excited, just trying to grow watermelon in an aquaponics system. I was looking forward to this. So I went and planted 4 watermelons in 2 containers. Okay, they grew up just fine until they began to fruit. And then right after that, I noticed that there was I noticed that the fruit soon developed a blossom end rot. A blossom end rot is a calcium deficiency. There's this black stuff that develops on the bottom of that watermelon. And so, realizing that it was calcium deficiency, I ended up getting some eggshells. I crushed them, and instead of just putting them on just the 2 pots, I ended up splitting all those watermelons into 4 containers, and I ended up putting in the calcium. So, okay, good on me, right? Fast forward a few days later, actually within a week, all those 4 plants had withered. They were drying out. And then the actual fruits were also drying off too. So what is the mistake here? The mistake here is you have to avoid transplanting mature fruiting plants. Okay? Instead, allow them to establish in the system from a young age where nutrient uptake can be regulated. Seventh one is overfeeding fish. Well, most of us do that. Because you're so excited about this ammonia, you're excited about all these nitrates, excited about want to make sure my plants get the best. I was just feeding my fish and feeding and feeding and feeding and feeding. Well, several things happened. The water became cloudy, and also it gets to a point where the fish are not really eating much. So you're wasting a lot of food. You're wasting your money because those feeds, that price adds up. The feeds are not cheap. It's going to become so expensive. So you're wasting money at that point, and you're also adding so much ammonia build up in your system, and that's not going to help the plants. It's not going to help the fish either. Solution is you want to stick to small, consistent feeding routines. I'll say, for example, 5 minutes, right? In 5 minutes, feed your fish. Just a small portion. If that portion is going 5 minutes, 2 things you can do. You can add more, or you can just leave it. However, if you come back and you still find food still floating over that fish tank, you need to remove it, because if you don't, you're going to spike your ammonia levels, and that's going to be very toxic. So you don't want to do that. Okay. Moving on to the next, which is the 8th mistake that I made, was I fed duckweed to my fish, which is a good thing. However, on my grow beds, okay, these grow beds, they did not have filters. So what ends up happening is the pump, because you have all this duckweed in here, the pump is going to suck the remaining uneaten duckweed and discharge it onto these grow beds. Since you don't have any filters there, which was my case, it's going to end up getting into your root system for the plants, and it's doing 2 things. It's going to be taking away the dissolved oxygen. At the same time, it's going to be taking away the nutrients. So your plants are basically not going to do well. Okay, so you always want to make sure you put filters on your grow beds to prevent any solids from getting into your grow media. Moving on to the 9th mistake that I made was I was feeding my fish bread. Let me explain this. My tilapia fish, and they're actually wild tilapia fish because I caught them from a local fish pond. Okay, I was using wheat bread, as bait to catch them, and I noticed there's just something about that wheat bread that those fish like. Initially, you just see the small ones, but as soon as you drop the wheat bread in there, even the big ones come up, and I'll just go ahead and scoop them up. And I was really loving it. So when I got home, I fed them even more bread. Over time, I noticed that the bellies were bloating out, and they were not eating as much. So that was telling me 2 things. They're constipated, and also they're not having good health at that point. Bread lacks nutrition and causes water quality issues. So the remedy is this. First of all, don't feed your fish all these carbohydrates. You want to feed your fish, you can feed them the commercial protein-rich feeds, and also you can supplement that with leafy greens like sweet potatoes, which is what I do. The tilapia will eat kale, they'll eat all kinds of vegetables. Now, specifically for my case, and you can check out my videos for this, I usually feed my fish sweet potatoes, because sweet potatoes are very easy to grow and they love eating those leaves. Okay? So you can do that, but don't feed them all these carbohydrates and all these other things. Just stick to commercial feeds and then supplement that with some vegetables. Okay. All right. Moving on to the 10th one, which is my last one. This one I really regret. The 10th mistake I made was I installed this pump right here. I installed a high capacity pump in my system without a strainer on it. Let me explain. You have your pump right here. Water comes in, water goes out. This right here is a strainer. Keep you from sucking in fish. So the original pump that I had was only 2,000 gallons per hour. The one I ended up installing was 4,000 gallons per hour. So obviously that's twice as much water being discharged an hour. Okay, when I did this, I was feeling good. I went to bed that night very satisfied, feeling very happy. I woke up the next morning, and I woke up this morning to find something very sinister. Look at all these bones. That's fish right there. That's all fish. See that? Check inside. That's all fish. At least 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 fish. Okay, I'm gonna bring it back. So many fish. Look at that. That's a lot of fish, man. Oh my God. I turn the pump off. So, there's still a few fish in here. Pump this off. Until I fix it later. I lost so many fish, man. I killed most of the big fish. At the point, I had like 4 to 5 inch long fish. A lot of those just got sucked into because this filter was not there. So it's just exposed, right? A bunch of fish got sucked in there on the grow beds. I find bones, I find flesh. And then when I took apart the pump, I found more fish stuck in here. And I was very disappointed. I was so disappointed. So just remember this. If you're gonna be installing a pump inside of your fish tank, because there's some other systems that don't even have a pump inside the fish tank. They probably have like a sump tank for that. But if you're gonna be using a submersible pump inside of your fish tank, like I did, what you wanna do is make sure you have a strainer on it. But for my case, I had more than a strainer. My remedy was basically, I ended up getting a bucket, 5-gallon bucket, and I drilled holes in this bucket, covered it, dropped the pump in here. To date, I've never lost any more fish. No more. That was a mistake I regret making. So guys, you see, none of this was easy to learn. But every mistake made me better. If you've made mistakes like me, please, I really want to hear them. I really want to see them. Like, share them in the comments below. It may just make me feel better. But share them so that, you know, some other people don't have to make the same mistakes. All right. And then if you're new to this channel, make sure you subscribe if this content appeals to you, right? Like this video if it's really brought to you some value, and then I'll see you in the next video. Thank you for watching, guys.